Welcome to the My Words Matter podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Iguatu, and today I'm gathered with the lovely Scott Moss. What's going on, Scott?
It's a great week. Every week's a great week here. 5 classes and a lab this semester. So
What's the lab for?
every day, geology, rocks and minerals.
Doesn't seem too fun, but we
okay.
keep it.
It's a science requirement. I got to have it. So
That's fair. So let's get into that. So tell me a little bit about yourself. What's going on in school here? Where are you at?
I'm technically a junior. I'm a double major, history and English.
Okay.
And
Nice.
plans to stay on and do my master's in creative writing. So
Okay, so what prompted the later occurrence for school? How did we get here?
Really a bucket list item more than anything else. I've been really fortunate during my life to have 2 careers. I worked for the Walt Disney Company from 78 to 98. After my 20 years with them, I was like, yeah, it's time to try something a little bit different. I had been in hotel operations in the resort division for Disney, so, helping run hotel front desks, customer service, all of that sort of thing. Took a job with an airline, and 9/11 happened. And I could see that the particular airline that I worked for wasn't going to make it. They were going to go down in flames, basically. So I sent out some feelers, had some friends that worked in the government, and they were like, well, this new agency is starting up.
Nice.
Send your resume to the Department of Homeland Security, and here's where to send it. Sent that out, got a phone call the same afternoon saying, hey, can you fly to Chicago tomorrow for an interview? And I was like, I'm there. And they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I did my next 20 years with DHS, working for the Transportation Security Administration.
How is that to be at the start of Homeland Security?
It was chaos, to be honest. We started out with no uniforms, so the people that you see in the airport doing their thing, TSA did not have that at the beginning. The employees showed up with a white shirt and khaki pants and basically took over the process of doing airport screening, and that's where my airline background came in. I was ground security coordinator for America West Airlines, and I signed on with TSA for a 2-year commitment to go around the country, airport to airport, and teach people security procedures. And it turned into staying with them for 20 years.
No, that really shows you how time can just breeze by out of nowhere. So I guess my next question is, what brought you here to tech?
So we started thinking about retirement. I was back in Florida. We had moved. We've lived in 11 states plus DC. And I was back in Florida finishing off my time with DHS in Orlando, and we started saying, where do we want to retire? Do we want to stay in Florida? Do we want to go somewhere else? We've been in Los Angeles for 4 years. We loved California, didn't particularly love LA. And we just started doing research. And people that live in Cookeville may not know this. Cookeville popped up in an article in Money Magazine, I think it was around 2016, as one of the best places in the country for retirees. And we were like, well, Cookeville's not far from Orlando driving-wise. Let's start making some trips up there and look around. And we did. We loved the area. We loved the fact that the university was here. My wife and I both said we don't want to turn into old fuddy-duddies. We had too many friends that retired and moved to retirement communities, and then they're completely surrounded by people that are just like they are. They're over 55. They play golf 3 times a week. Afternoon drinking, and we're just like, that's not for us. So we found the perfect place here, and the fact that tech was here, I was like, you know what? I want to go back to school, and started as a history major. Got into that, realized I was also loving the English classes that I was taking, and said, I'm going to double major. It only adds 10. It only adds 10 extra classes.
Only 10?
And I'm gonna double major, so that's where I'm at.
Okay, so I guess you transitioning from working with Homeland Security to now being a student. How was that transition? Like, what obstacles did you have to deal with trying to go back to school in like your 60s?
So fortunately, I have to give tech some credit on this. They make it very easy for older students
Okay.
to come to tech. Everything from tuition breaks, because my tuition is absurdly low compared to what the average student pays. But that's being over 65.
Okay.
You get quite a break. And the professors and the administration have been very approachable with questions and concerns. My biggest was I've been out of the academic world for so long. Am I going to be able to step back into academics and be as successful as I want to be? I'm an overachiever. For me, I always have to be the best at everything that I do. So all of a sudden it became a thing for me. I'm going to see if I can graduate with a 4.0 GPA.
Where are you on that? On that?
Spanish killed me.
Okay.
So I got my first B's in Spanish. I'm 392.
That still impressive.
But I will not go any lower.
Okay, there we go. You're setting that standard high.
That's my goal. So we'll see what happens. But and there's no reason for it. I don't need a high GPA. I'm not going to really probably be looking for a job when I'm done. I may decide to teach here and there. I may just sit at home and write history books because that's my jam anyway. So
there we go. So I guess now I'm curious. So then what is your main reason for being at school? So I understand that you kind of discussed, you did want to do something that's like different from the norm, getting comfortable, I guess.
Yeah, it was. And the fact that I put two daughters through school, both of them went to college. Both of them did extremely well. My oldest daughter's an attorney. My youngest daughter right now is a stay-at-home mom, which she's very happy doing. But they're both well educated, and I'm like, Dad never got the degree, so let me go back and get it, just so I can cross that off my list. Check that box, and who knows what the future will bring.
There we go. I guess I kind of like that idea. I was actually watching a show where like the main character's goal was to just get through his bucket list, and his bucket list was absolutely absurd. But it was because he felt like for his entire life he was like forced to go in like a certain direction. So being able to kind of have that freedom and just be like, hey, I was finally able to do this and I'm proud of it, and just keep on moving.
And that's it. You've got to break through your fear barrier, because we all have that about different things. My wife does stand-up comedy, and she's performed on some of the biggest stages in Los Angeles. She's performed on stage at the Comedy Store in L.A., and she would get extremely sick to her stomach before a performance, practically throwing up. But once she got up on the stage and did her thing, then it was just like, yeah, I nailed that.
There we go.
And that's a great feeling.
No, I love it. So with being a non-traditional student here, what kind of like challenges have you had to face with, like, I guess, whether it's with teachers, professors, other classmates? Have you noticed anything off or like different?
I won't say completely different. I think one of the things all students need to be aware of, regardless of what age you are, is don't listen too much to what other people tell you.
Okay.
There's good advice, and then there's opinions. And if you can learn to separate those two, you're a step ahead of the game. I've had classes with professors where people would come to me and say, don't take a class from this person. Nobody ever gets an A with this professor. And one of the folks they happened to mention, I've had 4 classes with and have gotten an A in every single class. So rate your professor.
Oh, yeah.
Don't pay attention to that. And if you're taking something that you have a passion for, that you really like, you're going to succeed. You're going to find a way to succeed because that's what you want to do.
That adds up because what I think is going on is more so, like you said, when you're passionate about something, you're putting 110% in. You're putting all your effort into it. So you're going to try to come out with the result you want. When you're taking the gen ed that you're not really interested in, you're just trying to get by. It's something you're trying to check off. You're looking for the easy way out, the easy professor. But when you have someone that's even testing you a little bit, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm out of this. Like this is not what I'm trying to do. So
Right.
it makes sense.
I mean, I do have to say, English Comp 1 and 2 was a real struggle for me because I've been writing since I was in my teens, and my job in the government, thank goodness, gave me the opportunity to do a lot of writing.
Okay.
And so that was tough that I actually had to check those boxes and get through that class, and I wish there had been a way to escape that. But other than that, it's the challenges have been really adapting myself to the environment that I find myself in, because most of the students that are here are looking for a career, and that's what they're here for. They're not here really necessarily for education as an education itself.
Okay.
Which is what I'm really here for. For me, it's just the process of, hey, it's really cool to be learning things again, and I just enjoy every minute of it.
Okay.
And I don't have to, I'm fortunate because I don't have to worry about putting a paycheck in the bank when I'm done. My paychecks are already there. So...
No, that's a great point. Honestly, sometimes I don't even think we think about it. Our goal, for at least most of us, is we're going to college to get a job.
Right.
We're trying to set ourselves up for that next step. But when you've already had that next step, what does that look like? And you're here telling us it's fun.
It is fun.
Because it takes away like the pressure and like the stress.
There's zero pressure on me. Yeah, and very little stress other than finding a parking space in the morning.
Very fair. Very fair. I know, so you talked about having to write a lot while you're working for Homeland Security. So how did that, I guess, transition into you preparing for your major, since that's really important?
So the biggest assist came from the fact that I was a program analyst for the Department of Homeland Security for the Transportation Security Administration. And in that job, my job was basically to advise senior government managers at the federal security director level and higher on government programs, things that they've implemented, what's working, what's not working. And a lot of times it would be as simple as a new management directive would come down from Washington, D.C. It could be short. Some of them were 3-4 pages. Some were really long that would be 40-plus pages. And then my boss, I answered directly to a federal security director. Federal security director would throw this 40-page document on my desk in the morning and say, condense this down into one page for me and give me a briefing on it this afternoon. So after that, doing an abstract for an English class is
Cake.
an easy lift, because I don't have a senior government manager looking at me saying, keep me out of trouble, just tell me what I have to do. What changes do I need to make? What am I responsible for? And what keeps me out of jail, basically. And it was great practice. I got really good at trimming things down.
There we go.
And if I learned anything in the 20 years with the U.S. government, it's that most documents don't need to be 44 pages long.
I think, some of the professors in the back should hear that, but I don't know if they'll ever make it to them. I'm wondering, what is your relationship with your professors? Do you feel like that's different at all?
It is. It's very different. Overall, in a lot of my classes, I feel more like a peer with the professor than I do with the students sometimes. And it's because of the age factor. Mm-hmm. I'm actually older than most of the professors I take courses with. So I think right away, they look at me differently than they do your average student. And that changes the dynamic of that relationship. And So although I may be a demographic that some people might view as being on the margins of the average university student, in a way, I'm not, because with that marginalization comes a sense of powerlessness and not having control over which direction things are going. And I've never felt that by dint of the fact that I'm older, I've had a career, and I don't have the pressure that the average student has. So that makes it easier for me. The only times I've ever felt like I needed some help is just not getting some of the things that a newly entering freshman might get at the university.
Okay.
I never had an orientation.
You didn't have.
I had a quick online thing where I just read some things, but I was considered a transfer student because I did have some college credits. So I showed up first day at Tech, basically just walking into a classroom and everyone assuming, all right, I already know where everything is and how to do everything. And I had to learn it as I went along. So I had to learn how to deal with the financial aid office, how to deal with bursar, where to find
just random buildings. Yeah. You struggled like every freshman getting to class.
So that was right. So I've got a lot of empathy for the kids that are coming in and are like, this is totally new to them. I know how they feel.
Mm-hmm. So I guess what helped you kind of get comfortable being in college?
Getting involved.
Okay.
So I can't stress enough how anytime that you feel like you're kind of on the outside, put yourself forward, step into things, and join as many organizations as you can.
What are you a part of currently?
Currently, I'm College of Arts and Sciences ambassador. So I'm an ambassador there. I'm heavily involved with the History Club.
Okay.
I belong to Avant-Garde, the French club. Non-traditional student organization.
Oh, okay.
And 3 honor societies. So
the overachiever is showing.
The overachiever side comes out, and if you do that, and if you put yourself out there, you'll find that there's ample opportunity in the university setting to always say yes to something. And it's when you say, no, I'm going to let somebody else do that you're probably missing an opportunity to learn something not only about yourself, but about other people.
There we go. No, so I guess you're still going through this process, but do you have any like tips for anyone else that is like later on in life trying to like return back to school, whether they've already got an undergrad degree or this is like their first one?
Don't be afraid to ask a question. We often hear it that there's no such thing as a stupid question, only stupid answers. So even if you think that, well, this is probably something everybody should know, ask the question anyway. I haven't had a single experience at Tech yet where someone wasn't willing to help and say, let me help clarify that for you. Including the fact that I get reduced tuition because of my age, going to the bursar's office and saying, what do I have to do? What do you need from me? And what are my key dates? The biggest hurdle is the fact that I can't register for classes until almost the last minute. So each semester, I can't register until about 4 weeks before classes start.
Why is that?
Because I'm going for practically nothing. So,
okay, so they have you like bottom of like the totem pole.
Exactly. I'm on the bottom tier because really the folks that are paying full ride should get first shot at the class seats. So,
excuse me. No clue who's calling me. So
if there's a seat open in a class by the time it's time for me to register, it's great.
Okay.
Now, fortunately, because of connections and networking is extremely important, I've had several people in all the departments say, if you have trouble getting a class, come and talk to me. We'll find a way to shoehorn you in.
Okay.
and now I'm technically a junior, so
There.
it's getting easier now.
Oh, okay. That's good. I feel like junior year is when everything starts to pick up because everything's very concentrated
Well,
towards your.
I did everything backwards. I took most of my upper level courses first.
Oh, okay.
So almost all my upper level history requirements have been completed, and
You're just well
I took
off.
several upper level English courses, and now it's like, all right, I know I can do that. And I did that precisely because of that reason, because I was concerned about the academic achievement level that I would be able to achieve. And I was like, let me just take some hard stuff first and see if if I pass muster on that. And I did. So that removed some of that anxiety.
Do you wish that, I guess, with the way that your life has gone, do you wish that you maybe went to school sooner, or are you
I do.
comfortable? Okay.
No, I do. If I could go back, because when I graduated from high school, it was 1975. I had a scholarship opportunity, an academic scholarship opportunity from Ohio University, and at the time, that was the place I wanted to go. And family reasons got in the way and didn't end up going. Decided I would take a year off, do something fun, went to Florida, got a job with Disney, and then it turned into 20 years. But yeah, if I could go back, I'd be an English teacher. Would have probably been an English teacher still today if I had gone back and done what I wanted to do.
Okay. That's fair. But I feel like you've also enjoyed the route that you've currently taken.
I've enjoyed every minute of it. People always say that Disney World is the happiest place on earth. It almost was. I enjoyed going to work every day. Never got up in the morning and said, "Oh gosh, I don't feel like I don't feel
Okay.
like going to work today." Never had that happen.
They didn't like force you to have like a fake smile or anything.
Oh,
Or
absolutely.
okay.
Sure they did. But that was part of the show.
Mm,
It was. It's almost like you're putting on a character. I'm going and I'm putting on this costume.
yeah.
I'm taking on a role that's an on-stage role, and I'm dealing with the public from all over the world, all different walks of life, and as long as I stay in my role, everything will be fine.
I'm curious, since you have like a lot of like work experience and just you've lived more than most people have, you have that sort of like understanding, I guess, of like the way the world like operates. How do you see, I guess, diversity when it comes to school compared to like outside in like the workplace?
Let me go to DHS on that because Department of Homeland Security was a fantastic experience for that, and I think should probably be an example for universities, public, anybody that wants to approach diversity the right way. DHS is actually the most diverse department in the federal government.
Okay.
And I think part of the reason is that, at least for the folks that I worked with the Transportation Security Administration, almost half of our workforce had prior military and police background. And so once they came into DHS after having those careers, there were no stumbling blocks.
Yeah.
Everybody was
Yeah.
like, we know you've done X, Y, Z. And then at that point, it's just, what can you do? So we were very fortunate. Probably 20+%. Probably, I think if the last figures I looked at, it was probably around 25% of our workforce was African American. Probably 25% was Hispanic.
Okay.
Or identified as Hispanic. And then the rest was just a conglomeration of everything, depending on what city you were in at that point. I was fortunate enough to work in Los Angeles, work in Seattle, Orlando, Florida, and the demographics would change a little bit depending on where you were located. But it was always a great, diverse workforce, and I have to give DHS kudos because we even had transgender employees in all those departments doing some really cool things with DHS, and from my perspective, it was never an issue in the workplace. And I think that's what people need to understand is get beyond the surface, focus on the job, and just pick the right people for the job.
And that's how it should be. I feel like a lot of the times the focus is more so to like pick the right people to like a certain extent. They still have to reach certain like check boxes, but honestly, the right person is just the right person no matter how they look.
It is, and don't be afraid if you've got a position of some authority. Don't be afraid to go to bat for somebody that may be in one of those positions that they don't have the power right now, and encourage them, help develop those people that are coming behind you, because you're not going to be in that position forever. I knew my job was going to be done at a certain point, and I needed, as a good leader, you want to make sure that the people coming in behind you know how to do everything you can do. So mentor, train, and encourage everybody. Even if you don't think you're going to belong in this group, lean into it, step forward, and let's tackle this together and make it work.
There you go.
And it did.
No, that's nice. One last thing before we wrap up here. So I guess in terms of community here at Tech, how have you been able to, I guess, meet more like non-traditional students? Like I know you talked a little bit about the orgs that you're involved in. Was it easy to get involved? Like what were the steps you took to find out about all these things, because you're coming from like no knowledge of anything?
It is. It's very easy to get involved. If anything, I found that the problem with a lot of our organizations on campus are people get into an organization and then realize that maybe they're in over their head a little bit as far as their time management comes. But if you're meeting people that share interests, which most of the organizations, they're centered around a particular interest, that diversity within the organization is going to happen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've been fortunate to meet people from, all over the world, different backgrounds, different socioeconomic status, and none of that matters because we're not dealing with those things. We're dealing with what's our interest, and let's focus on that, and then just encouraging everybody to come on board. Great thing about a club like the History Club, for instance, you don't have to be a history major. Any major at Tech can come on and be part of our group, and we're going to make you feel like you're part of the family the very first meeting they come to. I guarantee it. And we have some great events. I generally host a couple events every semester at my place, and we do a big cookout and hang out together. And
have you had a chance to go to Windows of the World? It's like it's called like the WoW Festival, where they bring in like different cultures and they all represent their fighters, like different food, music.
I haven't. My schedule's been so crazy the past couple of years that seems like every time I wanted to do an event like that, something else was scheduled. So I haven't. But this year, I'm setting time aside.
There we go.
Like
nice.
To make sure that I do.
No, I definitely think it's like a great experience. I definitely like go with people that have little to like no experience with other cultures. So it's always fun to like see them. Usually like we're starting with like the food. I'm like, oh, like this is like a completely different palette than like what I'm used to.
Right.
And then from there, you're like talking with the folk and they're just telling you more about themselves and about their culture. You're trying on different clothing. You're getting to see different artifacts. You're getting to hear different music. And all of it, like, I wish there's a way for us to promote this more, because I think at the back of everyone's head, they're like, cool, like, this was a great, like, one-day experience. And I'm like, why is it stopping at one day? I hope this would pique your interest for you to like, keep
Yeah,
going.
that's an excellent point, and that's one of the things that I ran into with my last job. Is it was easy because you're working alongside someone that may come from a completely different background. So I had a good friend that was from Morocco, now a U.S. citizen. He's Islamic, and working for DHS, so didn't fit what most people would think of as the stereotypical Department of Homeland
No, that makes
Security
sense.
employee. Another friend of mine that was raised on the south side of Chicago, huge hip hop fan, but he'd been a deputy sheriff. He had a police background. Got to hang out, do cookouts together, things of that sort. And I'm not sure that I appreciate hip hop as much as he does, but I got to know the poetry that falls into it and appreciate the artistry behind something that I didn't have a lot of recognition for before. So again, be open to a different perspective and look at things and realize, hey, there's a lot more to that than meets the surface. And I think the same thing applies to people. If people start doing that, you're going to realize your circle of friends is going to expand dramatically.
Yeah. I think it's just cool. I don't know. Me personally, I just feel like when you get to, just in terms of like meeting people, when you get to meet people like me getting a chance to meet you today, I've just had a joy on getting to hear something that usually I wouldn't get a chance to hear, and getting to understand where you're coming from, like the sort of life that you lived. I don't know how, you can't really find that as like anything but like fascinating and just interesting, because also I feel like you can live through other people. So like, and sometimes when you hear the different experiences people have had that are like whether friends or family, you kind of get to understand yourself, how the world works and like all that's out there, because you're getting to like see it from so many different perspectives. So I think it's always nice to try to expand like your circle. But I understand that sometimes it's difficult, so you got to like start somewhere. But
You do, and I think the great thing is that as our society changes, I think people's perspectives are going to change too on what they view as diversity, and I think diversity is going to change a little more from the superficial into more of the interior of people. There's a great website that's run by a lady named Maria Popova. She's an immigrant to the United States from Bulgaria, and she does this website called The Marginalian.
okay.
And she talks about marginalization, and particularly from an arts standpoint, artists, writers that have talked about social change and what things need to be done to move the needle as far as the status quo. And if anyone wants to look it up, The Marginalian, I think this week's entry, she actually has some writings in there by D.H. Lawrence, who back before 1930 wrote a letter to a friend about what he felt were the hypocrisies of social change, and then what it takes to shift the status quo. And the things that he wrote way back then, almost 100 years later, still apply today. So
It just shows us how like as a society we think like we've come a long way, which we have, but sometimes I feel like we overdo the growth that we think we have.
we do, and it's very easy for people to slip back into old behaviors and old habits. So sometimes we have to check each other.
Yep.
And give somebody an elbow and say, hey, wake up.
No, accountability is important. And that's honestly something that I think that most people just fear. And it could be for a numerous amount of things, whether it's like faith, religion, studies, just having to be held to a standard that isn't just set by you, but by someone else. we're afraid of that,
Right.
honestly, but that's something that honestly helps us become better as human beings. So,
Awesome.
well, Scott, love talking to you. I've
Thank you.
had great time here. I hope you've had a good time talking.
I
Hopefully,
do. I could talk about this stuff all day long, as you probably gathered.
but hey, that's okay. And I'm sure maybe we're going to be able to have you once again appear on the podcast. We'll
I
just see and look into it.
I would
So,
love to do it.
but I'd like to thank everyone here for watching. You have heard the My Words Matter podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Iglatu, signing off with Scott. Here we go.
Thank you.
Have a good one, boss.